Yes, Stephen Wright. So from NatWest Group, I kind of lead regulatory engagement and industry engagement on API standards covering open banking, open finance. We are one of the CMA 9, and we're also acting as a AISP, PISP in the market. And a big shout out to Open Banking Excellence for setting this up. I think it's a fantastic event. And just the conversations we've had before we got going tonight were really good, I thought, and highly collaborative. And for me, some of the big use cases for open finance, I think the first one is really giving consumers a view of their entire finances. Open banking PSD2 just covers payment accounts. And quite frankly, the majority of a customer's wealth or debt is actually tied up in other products that aren't covered there. So being able to give them that view, give them better advice, better product comparisons, and actually help them have better financial health as a result, I think is really big benefit. And the other thing I think is interesting as well is when you start to look at the right side of open finance and actually being able to automate onboarding to new products. If you look at the mortgages market, if you look at some of investments, other products, insurance, how through APIs and kind of sharing customer data attributes, as well as their account and kind of identity, KYC, etc., how you can actually automate onboarding and actually make switching easier. For open finance to be successful and to benefit consumers, third parties, it needs to be both regulated and standardized. And there needs to be consistency across different financial markets and scope. On the question of whether you mandate this or not, I think there's got to be a mixture of both, because I think the danger that if you mandate everything, one, you don't actually address the use cases that either consumers or third parties actually want and where there is value. And also you tend to have something that is very expensive. And if you kind of look at what we've done in open banking, and I think the collaboration that the OBE have kind of created across industry, and it's the first time you have that daily contact between banks and third parties, consumer groups. We've actually achieved an awful lot, I think, over the last 3 years. And I think having a kind of implementation entity model for open finance would be hugely beneficial. What I would expect the FCA to actually focus on from a regulation point of view is looking at the authorization of third parties, liability model, dispute resolution. I'm not sure as a consumer I would be happy with anybody having my data. I think I'd want them to be authorized by somebody in some way and then kind of assured. You also need to kind of look at the liability model, and you want to have consistency across the markets, because consumers are going to get very confused if liability or dispute resolution in banking is different to how it is for insurance or investments or pensions. So it's hard to get completely the same, but there does have to be some commonality. And I think you've also got to work with the industry to come up with a delivery plan that works and maybe prioritize it in terms of where you look at product information, read information, write information. And the last point I want to make is really around having a model that is the right level of cost, because I think there would be a concern, especially when you look at some of the other markets and providers. There's some quite small people out there. They are not going to have the kind of delivery capacity of NatWest, Barclays, HSBC, and even NatWest, Barclays, HSBC. I mean, those were colossal streams of work. So you do have to bear in mind, if you want providers to join this and providers to share data, and the only way this works for a consumer is you have as much of the market as possible. You do need to make sure it's proportionate on a cost basis. If you look at what we deliver in open banking, only a proportion of the APIs are used, and they're used frequently. But we've built a whole load of services that haven't been used for last year. You speak to third parties and they don't intend to use them, or they might down the line. But there's other things that they come to you and say, well, actually, if you had done this or could provide this would be really useful to us. But that wasn't in scope of the regulation. So there is a danger if you over-mandate of unintended consequences regarding what data you get and how useful it is to you. I agree from the comments around designing it from the point of the consumer point of view and having some consistency around how you do consent and authentication and security across open finance. I think the challenge is people say you can just build a technology solution that's easy. I think the last 3 years have proven that it's quite complex and quite difficult, especially when you see the range of firms involved in open finance and the various kind of histories and legacy of their architecture and what systems they can perform and support. So I think that does need to be thought about quite carefully, how you come up with something that's actually workable on both sides.